Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Well, hey there, how do you do? And welcome into the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I appreciate you subscribing and downloading this show and making it a destination with regularity. It means a ton to us. I know there are a lot of places you could be. And it really helps us when you leave that 5-star review and that written review at Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you have the time to scroll down to the bottom of the menu of shows and leave 5 stars, that helps us grow a lot. And of course, if you ever want to pass this show around to somebody else, we're always grateful for you spreading the word, because your endorsement of this show means more than anything I can do myself in terms of marketing or otherwise. So thank you very much. And thanks for supporting the sponsors who make this show possible, like John Ruhlman, the guy that runs usmedicalplan.com. And he wants to talk to you if buying health insurance is something you dread or you're doing and you think, I can't afford it, it's breaking me. I'm a small business guy. I want to treat my employees well. Or maybe you're somebody who has 2 or 3 employees, not a whole staff, but just 2 or 3, and you still want to give them health insurance, but it's costly. Look, have you shopped group insurance with John? USMedicalPlan.com works with 80 different private health insurers around the country, so John will shop and compare what you're currently paying. He's not going to give you cut rate coverage either. This is the thing that a lot of people worry about. They say, well, okay, if John gets me a cheaper rate, does that mean I'm not going to be covered as well? No. In fact, what John has told me a lot is he gets on the phone with people who complain about how much they're paying, and then he tells them, you know what, and you're not really getting the kind of coverage you think you're getting. So John does 2 things right away. He assesses the insurance you have, tells you whether the coverage is any good or not, then immediately goes to work to find you something less expensive with as good as or better than coverage that you currently have. So if you're a small business, if you are an individual, if you're a senior citizen, if you're a young person and you need supplemental coverage or you just need a policy that you don't have at all, please reach out for just a couple of minutes and talk to John's team about it. They also have a great customer care program so that you're not doing bureaucratic nonsense, waiting on the phone, back billing and paperwork and blah, blah, blah. I love that John is a one-stop shop and a full resource for all your insurance needs, affordability, and full coverage. That is the name of his game. He's a young father himself, so that matters to him. It matters to me, and him taking great care of this audience is the most important thing to me. So cheaper insurance, better coverage, usmedicalplan.com, usmedicalplan.com, or 877-410-4321. I've gone out of my way to not talk, really, about this Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, Trump trial in Manhattan thing. I've really kind of gone out of my way. Now, we're going to have Karoline Leavitt on the show. She's been part of the Trump trial. We've talked with some of the players inside the courtroom. We think it's important that President Trump have a hearing here and a representation here, because that's the news that there was the week of the campus protests, but outside of that, it has been wall-to-wall Trump in the Manhattan courtroom. And of all of them, I've told you that this is the one, other than when Fannie Willis, the fraud of Fulton County, who just won her Democrat primary, by the way. That tells you the state of affairs in Fulton County, Georgia. It's the Philadelphia of the South. Fulton County, Georgia just christened her the Democrat primary winner yesterday, the fraud of Fulton County. But I digress. She's so bad that they stopped paying attention to her altogether. They know she's cooked. That's done. They have no case against Trump in Georgia anymore. So they've been hanging their hat on on Jack Smith, and you know that's before the Supreme Court. We're all waiting till next month breathlessly. Will the Supreme Court come out and grant immunity to Trump and stop Jack Smith from being able to prosecute him? Hence the Justice Alito flag flying upside down stories. But short of that, all they've got left now, because Judge Cannon down there in Mar-a-Lago with the Mar-a-Lago documents raid, she said, we're not racing this. You guys are inept, and no. So she shut that thing down. All they've got is Alvin Bragg. This Manhattan case is all they have. And what have I said about this one? Of all of them, it's the stupidest of all of them, and that's a high bar. It's the stupidest of all of them because this is already something that's been fully vetted and adjudicated and litigated at the federal level with the Federal Elections Commission, and nothing was found to be improper. So for the first time, I turn on cable news, and they are covering this with the severity of, I don't know. What's a serious, like OJ? I don't know what to call it. They're talking about this court case, and I mean all of them, whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC. And even if they're denouncing it, and largely they are, most of their guests are, most of their commentators are, they're denouncing the court case. But they're still talking about it. And I have to tell you something. Of all the things that are going on in the world right now, and there are lots, and I've got a stack a mile deep that I got to get caught up on today, I just want to say, as the defense rests yesterday, that's the big story. Ooh, Trump didn't testify, defense rest. Are you on pins and needles about this case? Here again, I have to sometimes stop and take your temperature because you're the smartest audience out there in radio and podcasting. And so I say to myself as the host, well, perhaps I'm not attuned to what the people want. Maybe I've lost touch. Maybe you're out there hanging on every word and every syllable with bated breath, wondering what will come of the Trump case in Manhattan. Do you get the sense that that's the audience fest, Eddie? I don't, but maybe you do. And if you do, you're the executive producer of the broadcast, so perhaps you admonish the host and tell me, no, Chris, you've missed it. You really should have been more plugged in here.
No, Chris, I think you're spot on, man. I'm always looking for inside news stories. What are they distracting us from? And
Yes.
I think that this audience is the smartest audience, as you say, and I know that they see this Trump trial as like, all right, what is really going on? Why are they covering this wall to wall and not something else? So I'm with you. I think the audience is with you as well.
What exactly did Gorka do yesterday? He was down there in front of the courthouse with, it looked like a murderer's row there. They brought in Don Jr. It was quite the cabal they had standing out in front of the courthouse. What was that all about? I missed it.
He was just part of that group that went down, or that was in the courtroom yesterday. So
just to show solidarity, he had a press event. He was reading something. I saw it in the airport, and I couldn't hear what he was doing. I just saw him reading something in front of a microphone. Don Jr. over his shoulder. I was like, oh, it's Gorka down there. And people were asking if that's where I was. People wondered if I had gone to Manhattan yesterday. That is not where I was yesterday. I was on assignment, but it was not Manhattan. Although, if I'd been invited, I certainly would have gone. That kind of looked fun.
Yeah, that was the funny thing. So I see Gorka, and then Jersey Joe Piscopo is trending on Twitter, and of course it's leftists attacking him, but he was there as well. So
did Joe go?
He did go yesterday. Yeah. So that would have been a good guess if the audience had called yesterday and say, "Is Chris in New York?" I would have said,
"That's funny." So they were just there showing solidarity as things wrapped up. Is that it?
Yep, and then Gorka did say, I can try and find the audio. He did say something, and he was challenged by a journalist, and then he shouted them down because he's Gorka. So,
okay, well, yeah, maybe we will get into that a little bit, just because that is kind of interesting. But I listened to their detailed coverage of the Michael Cohen testimony and this judge and this Costello character that they called up that was working with Cohen early on. I hadn't... See, I'm kind of doing it now. I'm breaking my own rule, but I'm only doing it to make a point. I had not listened to a single syllable of any of this coverage. It didn't interest me, right? I listened to this, like actually paid attention to it for a minute, and I thought to myself, this is more nonsensical than even I thought. This is more stupid and ridiculous than even I thought. Chief among the things that is stupid and ridiculous is the fact that this guy on multiple levels, on multiple fronts, is not just a liar, he's a thief. Their star witness, Alvin Bragg's star witness in this nonsense, non-story, non-trial, is a thief. And they, rather than just get it out in the open, this is how stupid Alvin Bragg is, this prosecutor. His star witness stole 30 grand from Donald Trump. They knew it, and they never brought it up. Now, one of the first things you do as a prosecutor, if you're star witness against the guy you're trying to throw in jail, if he has some credibility issues, the first thing you got to do is tackle that head on. I've watched enough courtroom shows to know that if your star witness has credibility issues, you've got to deal with it straight up so that the jury knows you're not hiding anything. They didn't talk about this. So Trump's defense team is kind of sitting there. They must have been like, you guys are wrapping up and you're You're really not going to... Okay, you're going to let us cross-examine him and you're not going to bring up the okay. So Trump's attorneys have gotten engaged here in the last few days and just ripped Michael Cohen to shreds. Not that any of us really needed the case made that he's a weasel and a scumbag. That there would be a single juror, even in Manhattan, that would entertain this as legitimate for a second after this last couple of days that I just heard for the first time. In a way, I'm kind of glad I was in the hotel watching this yesterday. I didn't realize just how stupid this had become. I'd been ignoring it because I said, this is a non-story. And it is. This is not a real case. No crime has been committed. The federal government has already investigated this and said it's fine. There is nothing to this. Non-disclosure agreements are done all the time. They're not illegal. There's nothing improper about any of it. I have ignored this. But yesterday, I had to pick my jaw up off the hotel room floor when I heard just how embarrassingly bad this Michael Cohen guy is. And just for the sake of having said I did it, the CNN people are the exact same way. They're in an absolute snit about this. They cannot believe that Alvin Bragg and the prosecutors didn't bring up that he just stole 30 grand from Trump and admitted it right away. Like when the prosecutor rested and Trump's defense team took over, one of the first things they did was go for Michael Cohen on his credibility. And they said, didn't you steal from Trump 30 grand? Cohen, without missing a beat, yep, sure did. Stole. And then, just a laundry list of, did you lie? Yep, I did. I mean, to credit Cohen's credit, he's just like, yep, I'm a liar. I'm a thief. I'm a con artist. Yep, check. They bring in this guy that was working with him, Costello or whatever. And this Costello, this attorney, says under oath, he's a former federal prosecutor himself, and he says, this guy said to me repeatedly, Trump did nothing. Like, just stone cold, this Costello guy said, he has repeatedly told me over and over and over, they've got nothing on Trump. Trump did nothing. He has said openly on these stupid shows that he does that he's selling merchandise and he wants to see Trump. There is no less credible a human being on planet Earth. This is maybe the world's worst witness. And the prosecution has hung their entire case, which was a non-case, on this guy. I had no idea. I feel a little bit sorry to this audience that I didn't revel in just how absurd Michael Cohen is as a person. And CNN can't believe it either. It's inarguable. You can't ignore what a train wreck this has been. Listen.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating stuff, and I have to say I'm still kind of reeling from the revelation that Michael Cohen stole money from the Trump organization, and that wasn't, at least to my knowledge, that the prosecution didn't get that out earlier, because it's not as though the prosecution is going to be helped by further evidence that Michael Cohen is a shady character. I'll get to the newest stuff in a second, but what's your reaction to that news? Because that was just kind of stunning.
I'm shocked that we are hearing it for the first time on day 3 of cross-examination of Michael Cohen, that the prosecution did not take the sting out, did not front it, because it goes to the heart of the actual case. It's not just about establishing him as a liar. They've done that. The prosecution fronted that. We knew that. He has convictions. But going to the heart of what you were telling your employer about what money you were owed and the extent of it, we're talking about $420,000. We've already seen the payment
this
structure
isn't like
here.
$15.
It's not $15. And if you go to the tablet, you can break down what was already known. We've known about what the breakdown of the money is. $130,000 to Daniels and her attorney. You've got $50,000 that's Redfin. This is important here. This was mentioned today.
Okay, so this just goes on and on and on. And it's not particularly interesting other than they are aghast. The point you should take away from this is they are aghast. Even old Lawrence O'Donnell, Larry over there at MSNBC, he's trying to figure out what to do with this. Holy crap. He admitted he stole $30,000. Well, I'm sure there's a perfectly good, try this one on for size.
Well, you know, the courtroom is where I began as a writer and a reporter a long time ago. So this is a homecoming for me in terms of a workplace. The shocking thing at the end of that cross-examination, and I just can't tell you how stunning it was, because it's the thing that I was waiting for. I saw everything Todd Blanche. I've seen every minute of cross-examination. I've seen every single question he's asked. And he sat down and ended his cross-examination without asking a single question about the $130,000 that appears on the Alan Weisselberg notes about how they were structuring the payment to Michael Cohen.
Because it's not criminal, you dummy.
$50,000 that's irrelevant to the $130,000, and that's where he very effectively got Michael Cohen to agree that yes, he stole $30,000.
Okay, so what Lawrence O'Donnell is trying to do here is suggest that while yes, Michael Cohen did admit, shockingly, that he stole $30,000 from Donald Trump, that really isn't the thing that the defense should be focused on. They never even brought up the payment, the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels. And Larry, the answer to that is, of course, because it wasn't a crime. And defense attorneys don't bring things up that they don't feel need defending. This is not a criminal activity. You know it, and so does everybody else. What is a crime, though, is stealing $30,000. Larry is irked that Trump's defense didn't talk about the Stormy Daniels payment. He's irked that they focused on him stealing from Trump. You can't make this up. I'm sorry, folks. I'm breaking my rule here now that this trial is effectively over. Now I'm breaking my silence on it. I'm reveling in this. If this jury comes back with anything less than not guilty, then you know how bad it's gotten. You know how rigged the system is. Can there possibly be, how many jurors are there? 12? Is that usually the number 12? Can there be 12 people after this that find Donald Trump guilty? This is their star witness on the prosecution. Can there be 12 people in Manhattan that say, oh yeah, he's totally trustworthy, Trump's guilty? I don't know what to tell you about it if it happens. It's Manhattan. It's partisan. It's bad. The Dersh went over there to Fox News and Hannity to give his breakdown on it. I mean, I was watching a little of what our buddy Andy McCarthy was breaking down, too. He's been in the courtroom over at Fox. And Andy said this judge is just, and again, Andy is no Trumpist. He's no Trump fan. And I think that Andy actually kind of tries to lean into prosecuting Trump, if you want to know the truth about it. And I really like Andy. Like, he's a personal fan, but a friend. But I think Andy, when it comes to getting Trump and prosecuting Trump, I think Andy thinks there's reasons to do it, and he's supportive of the effort. I'll just be honest. I'm putting words in Andy's mouth when I say that, but that's my feeling about Andy. And so rather than fight with him about the law, when it comes to these cases, I have just avoided talking with Andy about it. Fox is giving him center stage. So Andy is really trying to legitimize this as best he can. He really is, because he's a man of the law, and he wants to treat every courtroom and every court and every prosecutor as totally on the up and up, because he comes from Manhattan federal prosecutions, and Andy believes that, you know, the law is the law, and these are serious people, and they mean serious business. And, of course, we know that's not true. But God bless Andy. He's still the Boy Scout about the law and thinks there's merits, and if a prosecutor brings charges against Trump, there must be a there. Even Andy on Fox yesterday morning, as I'm sitting there picking my jaw up off the floor, is saying this Judge Merchan guy is the worst. The absolute, just a pipsqueak, tiny man, Napoleon syndrome. He's shouting at every witness that dares speak over him. I am in charge of this court, by God. You will do what I say. I'm the judge here. He's one of those guys. Constantly thumping his chest and whipping out his small appendage, reminding everybody who's in charge. It's a joke. Here's some of what Dershowitz had to say watching this.
I sat in the front row, literally just feet away from where all the action occurred. I rolled my eyes when the judge made some rulings that were absurd. Any first-year evidence student would understand that he was making biased rulings in favor of one side. I stared him down, but Costello didn't. He acted like a normal witness, and the judge went berserk. The judge violated Trump's constitutional right to a public trial by kicking the media out of the courtroom. I don't know why I wasn't kicked out. And I heard him lecture Costello. What you did was contemptuous. You looked at me contemptuously. And, it reminded me of Mae West when a judge said, you're showing contempt for the court. And Mae West said, no, Your Honor, I'm trying my best to hide my contempt for the court. I'm sure Costello was trying to hide his contempt for the court, but the judge had such a thin skin that he threatened him. He said he would strike the testimony and hold him in contempt if he rolled his eyes again. You have a constitutional right to roll your eyes and to stare at anybody. It was absurd. And then to sit so close to Cohen, watching him give lie after lie. Would you believe he actually said he would not have accepted a pardon from Donald Trump after he had previously said he would do anything to avoid prison? He would lie, he would cheat, he would do anything to avoid prison, but I won't accept a pardon from Donald Trump. If you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. There were so many lies and then failure to allow a full testimony from the expert when the other side was allowed to introduce letters saying, and the jury will believe it, as Jonathan correctly said, that it was illegal, it was illegal, it was illegal. This expert was going to come in and rebut that. This judge has committed more reversible errors in the one day I was in the courtroom than I've seen in years and years of practicing law. It's just an outrage.
Now, this is a Democrat. What you just heard was a Biden-voting Democrat, not a Trump voter. And a Harvard law professor, emeritus. This is the most ridiculous thing as a country we've ever sat through. This is a former president of the United States in this kangaroo court nonsense. And so now we enter the final stage of this as the jury goes to deliberate. And fast, Eddie, given everything that we've just laid out here, I've not covered this for one day until today. But given just what you've heard, if you landed here from Neptune and this is all you heard about this, and you understood our judicial system, is there anything you could even remotely get close to suggest there's legitimacy to this, or that a jury would return any kind of guilty verdict based on what you've just heard laid out this morning?
Chris, no way. No way whatsoever. And it starts at the very beginning. This case started with 34 counts. Then the judge screwed it up, and now there's 30 counts.
That's right.
Michael Cohen, we know, has lied to Congress. And I don't know what the heck Lawrence O'Donnell was talking about. Why didn't, I call him the angry guy, Todd Blanche, the guy that stands next to him. Yeah. Why didn't Todd Blanche bring up the payment? It's just like, because that wasn't the line of questioning that uncovered Cohen stole 30 grand, you idiot.
That's right.
Sorry.
No. That's you share my sentiments. I always like to take your pulse because I always think to myself, was I wrong in not covering this? I really had felt guilt about it. And then yesterday morning, for the first time, I actually leaned in and listened to this, and I went, is this what people have been watching in the morning instead of listening to this show? I really, if you have been listening to that instead of me for the last weeks, I'm very sorry. And I kind of question your judgment a little bit. I don't know how you're absorbing it, but they're all talking about it every day. So out of the corner of my eye, while I do this show every day, I watch cable news treat this like it's the O.J. Simpson case. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, and I needed 30 minutes in my hotel room to assess it. And so you go over to Claire McCaskill, the former senator from New Jersey, Missouri, who lost her political butt so badly to Josh Hawley years ago. She's now, she gets paid to opine from her kitchen table in Missouri for Joe and Mika in the morning. And they're over there in a snit and in a panic that Trump is doing so well politically. And given everything I just laid out here and everything you just heard, how is it that they struggle with this? Listen.
I am still at the point when I walk through the grocery store, people come up to me and grab my hand and say, we're going to be okay, aren't we? He won't win, will he? They won't let him back in the Oval Office, will they? So I do think there is a level of panic out there because some people who look at all the facts and circumstances go, wait a minute, how could this be tied? Right? How could this be tied after everything that has occurred?
They're not going to let him. They come up to me at the grocery store and say, we're going to be okay, won't we? He won't win, will he? They're not going to let him back in the Oval Office, will they? This is a woman of the law. She's a former prosecutor herself, mind you. I think one of the questions she let out there is pretty apt and lets you know a lot about what the Democrats actually believe and the way they think. They're not going to let him back in. They're not going to let him back in. Did you catch that question? People say that out loud to her, or she thinks that, or both, and she just said it out loud on television. They're not going to let him back in, are they? How could this be tied? Well, I doubt that it is tied, to be honest. In fact, most polls say it's not tied. But this court case is one huge fat reason for anybody that's paying a modicum of attention out there. This court case is one reason why Donald Trump is doing as well as he's doing, and Joe Biden is doing as poorly, and you Democrats are panicked and clinging desperately to hope because you've been trying to, quote, not let him win, and you've been trying to rig an election through lawfare to stop him from winning, and we all see it. And you've gotten so sloppy and so desperate and so ruthless and ridiculous that it's come to this. Your star witness is a thieving, lying, contemptuous weasel on full display and admits it aloud. As the star witness to a case that's already been adjudicated in public at the federal level by the FEC, it's beyond credulity. I don't even have it. I can't. I left my credulity while I was away in the hotel room. I didn't pack it. I don't need it. So anyway, that's that. It's over. They want to get this thing wrapped up because, excuse me, folks. So then we go into June. And you know what's coming in June, as I told you last week. Next is the Supreme Court and their decision on Jack Smith and immunity. So we need to get this one out of the way. I'm not sure I can predict how the country's going to react if they find guilt here. I don't think that there will be any more panic on the pro-Trump side than there was during the E. Jean Carroll guilty verdict. I think everyone sees this as stupid as that. This is worse, actually. They're desperate for something. So this jury, this judge, they are trying to make something stick here. They're trying to turn this into something legitimate, and everybody sees that it's not. So even the Democrats, Dershowitz, Jonathan Turley over at Fox, these are Democrat Biden voters, and they're men of the law, and they're like, this is a joke.
Excellence in dentistry. That's what you're going to get at Williamsburg Dental. My friend Bob Spinato is back on the phone. He's in Broomall, just off the Blue Route. And with 2 new associates, now you can expand and offer more hours, maybe evening hours, possibly weekends, Bob.
Yeah, one of the things that I told them from early on when they started with me was the value of not only their own time, but other people's times. And they run on a similar schedule that I do. If you've got a 1 o'clock appointment, you're in their chair at 1 o'clock. And it's something that across the board at Williamsburg Dental, we really pride ourselves on, whether it's an appointment with the hygienist or whether it's an appointment with one of our doctors. The other thing is we now have some expanded hours in the evenings, and even there's some discussion about opening again on some Saturdays for services.
Yeah, but not you. You're fishing. You're not kidding anybody. It's not you going to be working on Saturday. Come on,
Well, I'm in my 33rd year, and it should be the young guns.
That's so right. You've earned it. You've earned it.
I feel like I have. Thank you.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com.
By the way, while we're on it, the raid of Mar-a-Lago. The moment that I decided that I had to vote for Donald Trump and that Donald Trump was going to be my Republican primary pick, no matter what, was the Mar-a-Lago raid. I told you that. It was August of 2022. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of that event. Can you believe it? It's been 2 years as of this summer. And that was the moment that I said to myself, this cannot stand. The American public cannot tolerate this. We as a country must not tolerate this. Donald Trump must be reelected. and the people who did this to him must pay. It's what's moved and motivated me for 2 years, the raid on our former president's home. We must never forget how egregious that was and how truly appalling and how truly no coming back from that kind of banana republic, third world dictatorial crazy. We'll never come back from that if that's not corrected. Never. There's nothing worse than that. You hear me? And I don't care how many things happen from that day to this and beyond. There will be nothing. That will be the tipping point. That moment in American history, if we don't course correct, that will be the moment I believe the country was lost. And I'm serious. Raiding a former president's home over documents that, in my view, he rightfully retained. But yesterday, the Biden administration, it was discovered from Fox News, authorized the use of deadly force during the FBI's raid on Trump's Mar-a-Lago. Statement to Fox News Tuesday. The FBI followed standard protocol in this search, as we do for all search warrants, which includes a standard policy statement limiting the use of deadly force. No one ordered additional steps to be taken. There was no departure from the norm in the matter. An operations order produced in discovery as part of Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation. The FBI believed its objective for the Mar-a-Lago raid was to seize classified information, NDI, and U.S. government records. According to the filing, DOJ and FBI agents plan to bring standard issue weapons and ammo, handcuffs, medium and large size bolt cutters. They were instructed to wear unmarked polo and collared shirts and keep law enforcement equipment concealed. Trump released a statement on Truth Social after this came to light. Wow, I just came out of the Biden witch hunt trial in Manhattan and was shown reports that crooked Joe Biden's DOJ and their illegal and unconstitutional raid of Mar-a-Lago authorized the FBI to use deadly, lethal force. Now we know for sure that Joe Biden is a serious threat to democracy. He's mentally unfit to hold office. 25th Amendment exclamation point. Can you imagine if someone had been, I just want you to, just for a second, you want to imagine somebody had been shot in that raid? There should never have been a search like this. Never should there have been a search like this to begin with. When they went in for the Husks documents, hidden behind the Corvette in the garage, or Pence's home in Indiana, remember? They went in there and seized documents from him. Were weapons drawn for those? Serious question. Were weapons and bolt cutters and handcuffs employed? Do you suppose? You want to guess? I bet you could safely guess no. I bet there weren't weapons drawn then. This is an outrage. It is appropriate that Trump call it as it is, outrageous, and I'm glad that this came to light on the same day, the same week that we see this nonsense in Manhattan. This should get Donald Trump reelected. This should. This week, these findings, this lawfare, should be the reason Donald Trump becomes the next president. And it should be the reason there's a wholesale purging at DOJ when he does become the next president of the United States. It should be job one. Absolutely flush DOJ. Every last one of these scumbag, reprobate, rat bastards. They all should be flushed out. It's got to be. And incidentally, even if you do that, not to be a sad sack about it, you have a whole federal judiciary chock-a-block full of radicals. This Judge Merchan, the lunatic judges that have been on parade throughout all of this lawfare, they're not going anywhere. By the way, that is one of the huge worries for the left, is that if Trump does get reelected, that in fact there will be a fifth pick, a fifth Republican. He thinks one of the justices will step down and Trump will get to pick yet another. Dan Pfeiffer, one of the Obama acolytes who does a podcast, I think now. He's out there panicking that if Trump gets reelected, it will mean curtains and the Supreme Court will get more stacked than ever before with Trump picks.
Think about the stakes of the Supreme Court. If Donald Trump wins, he will almost certainly get 2 more appointments. By the end of Trump's term, second term were he to win, Thomas will be 82, Alito will be 78.
They're definitely retiring.
They're definitely retiring.
If Trump wins again.
And it could be just KBJ, like holding down the fort.
And Justice Sotomayor will be 72 at the end of Trump's term. So he will definitely get 2 appointments. If he has 2 appointments, that means he will have appointed 5 Supreme Court justices, all of whom will be around or below the age of 60 when he leaves office. That is a court majority, a MAGA court majority that will rule for decades. We can win the next however many presidential elections, and absent something sort of extraordinary happening, Trump's fingerprints will be all over the Supreme Court. And so I think we should make this a big issue. And we know this works because in 2016, that vacant Justice Scalia seat that McConnell held open was one reason, and you heard this on a lot of focus groups and post-election surveys, that Republicans who did not like Trump at the last minute were willing to hold their nose and vote for Trump because they would care about the Supreme Court. So I think we can do that in reverse.
Oh, I'd love to see you try. I hope you do, Dan Pfeiffer. I hope you and all the brilliant Democrats do spend all your time talking about the Supreme Court and the dangers of the court if Trump gets involved. Yes, please. Oh, please, Dan Pfeiffer. Brilliant Dan Pfeiffer. Would you please do me a favor? I mean, I'll send you cash. I'll donate to your campaign right now. Would you please make the Democrat focus the courts? I'd love to have a robust national discussion for the next several months about the courts. I think that would be wonderful, actually. And I don't think that's going to end the way you think it does. I don't think most of the country is looking at the courts and thinking to themselves, oh, we have too much of that constitutionalist stuff going on. I don't know too many Americans that are alarmed that the court is restraining itself or choosing to not get involved or returning power to the states. When was the last time? Well, look, save the abortion thing, which that's more an emotional thing. It's not smart. It's emotionally dumb. People are emotional about abortion and they want it codified into law. But if everybody were to be actually honest and take their emotional idiocy out of it, they would understand that what the Supreme Court did with Roe was simply take power away from the federal government and hand it back to the states, which is actually a decentralization of power, a diversification of viewpoints. I mean, if you're pro-abortion, that actually worked to your favor. You know, I incorrectly said a few shows back, I don't know how long ago now, I once said that I suspected more lives were saved, fewer abortions were performed, thanks to some of the states that have outright banned abortion since Roe versus Wade was overturned. In fact, it's just the opposite. Pro-life groups I've spoken to since the overturning of Roe versus Wade say the stats on abortion are now actually sky high. They've gone higher than ever before. There are more abortions happening now, like abortion, foot on the gas pedal. There have been more babies murdered since Roe versus Wade was overturned because now people have become hysterically addicted to it. So if people were smart, and the left is often not, they're emotional and stupid, but if they were actually smart, they'd realize constitutionalists, Trump-appointed justices, try very hard to not get involved in things. And when they do get involved, almost always what it means is we're wresting power away from the federal government and handing it back to the people in their respective states. The Constitution, as Obama used to lament, is a charter of negative liberties. It's a document that says what the court and the government cannot do to the people. It is a firewall between the people and their government. That's what ticks the left off so much. So yes, let's have an election about the courts, Dan Pfeiffer. I'd love it personally. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said congressional investigations into Samuel Alito over ethics violations will have to wait until Democrats control the House. So that's their first item up for bid. Given everything I just said, that is where they plan to go first. Dan Pfeiffer has just sent out the alarm. we got to do something about this Supreme Court. I've told you for a while they've been trying to undermine it and attack its legitimacy. The upside-down flag flying thing, Clarence Thomas and his trips with his rich buddy, and on and on. The New York progressive lawmaker appeared to be referencing a public report last year that Alito accepted an invitation on a private plane to a fishing trip in Alaska years ago. They hate this Supreme Court. They're really puckering about next month. They're very worried this bunch is going to let Trump have immunity here, and Jack Smith will have to go yiping away with his tail between his legs. Oh, boy. And then Katie bar the door. If you thought they hated the Supreme Court before, you wait. Did you see where President Trump is planning to visit tomorrow? He's in Houston today, as I understand it. And then tomorrow, did you see where he's going? For an event. For I think a rally. The Bronx. The Bronx? I'm not making it up. Trump 2024 National Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt is here to verify these facts, which I believe is a fact. Good morning, Karoline.
Hey, good morning, Chris. Great to be with you. And yes, these are facts. President Trump in Houston fundraising today, which, by the way, we outraised the Biden campaign in the month of April. Even Joe Biden's big donors in Silicon Valley and Hollywood are done giving to his failing campaign. But tomorrow, we will be in the Bronx. It's going to be very exciting. We're expecting a crowd of thousands, and President Trump is going to speak about how Bidenomics has been ripping off the great people in the Bronx. It's going to be very exciting.
Now, this begs the question, because I've been asked it before. The Wildwood, New Jersey rally was epic, as we all know, historic in many ways with the numbers. People asked me then, is he making a play for New Jersey? Many Republicans believe that could happen in New Jersey. Is he genuinely making a play for New York here, or just making the case that even in the Bronx, people are hungry for change?
Well, that's certainly the goal of tomorrow, right? To make the case that tomorrow in the Bronx, surrounded by thousands of locals, President Trump is going to pitch to them. What do you have to lose? You've been voting for Democrats for decades, and look at where they've gotten you, especially Joe Biden's policies that have made life in New York especially more expensive. Joe Biden wants to double down on his higher taxes. New York's already one of the highest tax states in the country, and it's only going to get worse with 4 more years of Joe Biden, whereas if you elect President Trump, he'll cut your taxes, he'll bring inflation down to nothing like it was in his first term, and he'll make gasoline cheap again. What's to hate about that? So President Trump has a winning message, and we're unafraid to go to every corner of this country to bring it to all Americans. And we've seen the result of this in the polls. President Trump is polling a historic margin of Hispanic Americans and African American voters that no other Republican candidate for president has ever done before.
Wow. I can't wait to see the turnout at the Bronx. That's going to be a sight. I hope it's one of the biggest ones yet. There's an interesting piece in the New York Times. I know you saw, Karoline Leavitt. Black Philadelphia voters, 24 black Philadelphia voters were interviewed by the New York Times, and 8 of them, just 8 of the 24 black voters said they were voting for Biden. And in fact, gasp, the New York Times had to admit more than a few of them were considering voting for Trump. In Philadelphia, Karoline.
Yeah, it must have killed the New York Times to write that, but it's the truth. I mean, if you go out and you know, you're a radio host, you talk to people every single day, and if you go out into these communities, you will realize that virtually no one in America enthusiastically supports Joe Biden. I mean, the only people left, as I said earlier, are his big out-of-touch elitist donors in New York City and in Hollywood, and even they are backtracking because they realize what a disaster his campaign has truly become. He was up here in my great home state of New Hampshire yesterday, and the crowd looked more like a funeral home than an attendance for the President of the United States. I'm not kidding. The videos were sad. They're playing elevator music. The crowd is sparse. Nobody's talking to each other. I mean, it is a very grave contrast to what we experience at Trump rallies, where everyone is excited, enthusiastic, and fired up. And President Trump, he just lifts people up. He inspires the masses. And that's what we're seeing take place in this country right now. It's really incredible to be a part of and to see it firsthand, no matter where we go, whether it's Midtown Manhattan, the Bronx tomorrow, we will be in Philly. We will come back to Pennsylvania, of course. The president will be in Michigan and Wisconsin quite a bit. We're doing the convention in Milwaukee. We have a lot of fun stuff planned to bring our winning message everywhere we can.
this trial, such that it's been, I didn't talk about it at all until today. And the only reason I talked about it today is because for the first time yesterday morning, I happened to be away on business. And so I was not doing the show yesterday. And I woke up in my hotel and I turned on cable news, which I never get to do at this time of day because I'm doing my own show. And I'm watching the coverage of this trial. And it was the first time that I heard kind of, their kind of cable news treatment reporting on this thing. Karoline, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor. I mean, I've always known how stupid it is, to the point that I really wasn't even interested in talking about it because I thought it was so stupid. But the Michael Cohen stuff, and I don't know what you can talk about. Maybe you can talk about nothing. But I'll just say, editorializing here, what a train wreck. What a disaster. The guy's a fraud. He's a liar, and then proven to be a thief and admits it on the stand. If this jury comes back with anything less than not guilty, based on a sham trial to begin with, I'd be stunned. The American people have to see this. I mean, I don't even care how partisan you are. This is absurd. I guess it's all over now. Are you guys done with this now as far as your participation, or what can you say about it?
Yeah, of course. Well, Chris, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I've been in that courtroom almost every single day with President Trump for the past 5 weeks that this sham trial has been going on. And the prosecution rested their case, never even coming close to proving a crime, because there is no crime. And they knew that before they even began this witch hunt. President Trump is completely innocent. All of the charges that they're bringing forward are totally manufactured. The prosecution the case is closed, and they still can't even name the felony that they're trying to link all of these misdemeanor charges to. The whole thing was ridiculous and despicable to watch take place. And I agree with you, Chris. I think no matter how partisan one is, all Americans in their hearts, the majority, I would like to say, do care about fairness. And we want a fair system in this country. And what we've seen take place in that courtroom is totally, unequivocally unfair. They are persecuting the former president of the United States over absolutely nothing. And not only that, they gagged him the entire trial. He still is unable to, and I'm not either, as his spokesperson for his campaign, we cannot talk about the witnesses in this case, the testimony that they spoke about, even though it was full of lies, and even though many of the people involved have been on cable television and TikTok lying about the president, talking about the case, yet President Trump has been unable to defend himself. It is the greatest travesty of justice we've ever seen in this nation's history, and we pray that the jury does the right thing. And either way, this will ultimately be overturned on appeal. We're very confident in that. And ultimately, he's going to be vindicated at the ballot box, because people see right through this crap. And it really is a witch hunt. It's unbelievable.
There's got to be, and maybe you can't speak to this or it would be conjecture and you're not comfortable with it. There's got to, of 12 jurors, if the country still has a pulse, there's got to be one of them, at least one of them, that says, this is ridiculous. And at a minimum, it's a hung jury? Got to be. Or what do you think the legal team is thinking here?
I feel like I should get an honorary law degree after sitting in this courtroom for the last 4 or 5 weeks. One of the things that I've learned from our lawyers, our great, amazing legal team that's been fighting this tooth and nail, is that it's incredibly difficult to read a jury. And again, I've been sitting in that courtroom, obviously observing their behavior, their body language. It is tough to tell where people land, but you have to imagine, based on everything we've heard, on the lack of evidence and on the lack of legality here, that there's at least one of them thinking to themselves, I cannot move forward with a conviction of the former and potentially future president of the United States, especially when you think about the implications that would have. I mean, look, President Trump is entitled to be innocent until proven guilty, just like any other defendant in that courtroom, and they have to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt. And the prosecution didn't even get there, not even close. I mean, they don't have any shred of evidence other than the testimony of someone who is not trustworthy to move forward with this case. And so, again, we pray that truth will prevail. Ultimately, we know it will, but of course now it will very soon be in the hands of the jurors. So we have closing arguments on Tuesday of next week, and then it will be turned over to the jury, and God bless them.
Okay, so there is a bit more. It's not the prosecution rested. There's more. So closing arguments, I guess, have to come from both sides. Is that the way that works? Sorry, I know you're not an attorney. But,
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I feel like I am. Yes, that's correct. We have the prosecution and the defense. We rested our cases. No more witnesses will be called to the stand. And then the closing arguments will begin Tuesday. It is unfortunate the Memorial Day weekend has kind of delayed the trial even more. We were hoping to wrap up before the holiday, but just because of the holiday calendar, we're pushing it to next Tuesday. So that will be closing arguments, and then again the case gets passed on to the jury.
Once this is over, whatever over is, I don't know. Let's say the jury comes back not guilty, or a hung jury anyway, and then do you, as far as a timeline goes, it looks like the thing in Florida is not happening anymore. The Fani Willis thing, I think that whole thing's imploded. I'm not sure if that's just stalled out. We wait for the Supreme Court to rule on immunity with Jack Smith, I think, is where things stand. I guess from a legal perspective, what's your timeline now?
Well, all of these cases are crumbling because all of them are witch hunts that are being pushed forward by crooked Joe Biden. So we have this case in New York that's wrapping up next week. We pray that, again, truth will win, justice will prevail for President Trump here in New York. Then we have the case in Fulton County, Georgia, which has been delayed because of the misconduct and the unethical behavior, to put it lightly, of the prosecutor in that case, Fani Willis, or the DA down there in Fulton County. So that case is indefinitely postponed for now. And we're fighting that on the basis of the law as well. Our lawyers in Georgia have called for the dismissal of that case because it, too, lacks credible evidence. It, too, has no standing on the basis of the law. And then the January 6th case out of Washington, D.C., which is being led by Jack Smith, who is a longtime Democrat prosecutor working at the behest of Merrick Garland and Joe Biden. That case is stalled because it has been brought to the Supreme Court. And then, of course, the classified documents case, which is, again, utterly absurd. President Trump had every right under the Presidential Records Act to remove documents from the White House and bring them to Mar-a-Lago with him, which he did, rightfully. And they're prosecuting him there, but they're not prosecuting Joe Biden, who had no legal authority to take documents and was found with tons of them in his garage at his Chinese-funded think tank in Pennsylvania. So, we're just seeing the two-tier system of justice take place in every single one of these cases. But nevertheless, we are fighting them. President Trump has the best lawyers in the business, and we know that we have truth on our side. So we are pushing forward in every single one of these things. But it is unlikely at this point, we believe, that any other case will go to trial before the election.
Yeah, which means then he's free and clear. Once this thing wraps up in New York, he's free to start campaigning the way a normal campaign would operate, not constrained by a court schedule, you think? Or is that too soon to say?
Well, that is our hope, and that is what looks very likely, yes.
Yeah. Karoline Leavitt is the 2024 National Press Secretary for the Trump Organization. Very quickly, I wanted to play for you a former prosecutor herself, a former officer of the court, a former United States Senator who was relegated to the sidelines because the people of Missouri threw her out. Claire McCaskill said something interesting yesterday on cable news, and I just wanted you to hear it. Not that you haven't heard something like this before, but it's kind of amazing they say things like this out loud, Caroline. Listen.
I am still at the point when I walk through the grocery store, people come up to me and grab my hand and say, we're going to be okay, aren't we? He won't win, will he? They won't let him back in the Oval Office, will they? So I do think there is a level of panic out there because some people who look at all the facts and circumstances go, wait a minute, how could this be tied? Right? How could this be tied after everything that has occurred?
All right, now, beyond how can this be tied, I thought very telling was they won't let him back in the Oval Office, will they? They won't let him back in the Oval Office, will they? What kind of statement is that, Caroline?
Well, first of all, I don't even know who this woman is, but I would bet that no one has ever pulled her arm in a grocery store and said these things.
Right.
It's totally preposterous. But I also caught that as well, Chris. It's very telling. Right? It is the same language that we hear from someone like Speaker Pelosi, who has said that we, in terms of the corrupt Democrat Party, are going to do everything possible to prevent President Trump from returning to the White House. And they are the corrupt cabal of Democrats in this country who unfortunately control the Senate right now. Of course, they control the White House. They control largely every major institution in this country, including our mainstream corporate media that has been lying about President Trump for years. And so we must take them at their word and believe them. And they are going to try and do everything they can to prevent President Trump from returning to the White House. Their way to rig this election was their lawfare, their legal strategy to try and confine President Trump to a courtroom. That has massively backfired because all these cases are such a sham that people are seeing right through them. But we should not, underestimate what they will do to prevent President Trump from returning. He is the greatest existential threat to the corrupt Democrat Party and to the establishment that this country has ever seen. And that's why they hate him so much, because he's not beholden to them or their corporate interests or the warmongering machine. He's only beholden to the people, and he delivers on his promises, and that's why he's a threat to them. It's very sad to say, but it's true.
They won't let him back in. They won't let him. We don't let anybody do anything. We vote elections. We don't let. I mean, it's soulless pit of hell stuff, as you understand, Karoline. Listen, you've been so generous with your time. I hope you're able to actually enjoy a Memorial Day weekend. Are you guys looking forward to actually having a breather? I mean, I know your schedule's grueling anyway, and you're an expecting mother to boot, so maybe relaxation is not in your lexicon at the moment, but I hope it's I saw that the president got to be at Barron's graduation, which pleased me a lot. Will he be able to have some downtime this coming weekend?
Yes, he was able to go to Barron's graduation, and there will be a little bit of downtime this weekend, hopefully, for all of us. But, Chris, every time I think it's going to be a slow day, there's a crazy news cycle. Something's hitting the fan, and I'm working 15 hours. So we have yet to rest on this campaign, and especially bringing a baby into the world. I don't think I'm going to rest for the next, 20 years, and I've accepted that.
When are you due again? When are you due?
I'm due in July, so very soon, actually.
Oh my!
Yeah, well, we're gonna have this kid, and then we're gonna get back on the campaign trail.
God bless your husband, and God bless you and all your whole team, Karoline. It's been great to catch up. I hope you all have a well-deserved, short, if not short, rest this holiday weekend.
Thank you, Chris. You too. Take care.
That's Karoline Leavitt, the Trump 2024 National Press Secretary. And just a bundle of energy. I don't know how many people could keep the schedule anyway, never mind at 9 months pregnant. That is grueling. Here's some yesterday, by the way, in front of the courthouse. Our buddy Dr. Gorka, our friend Joe Piscopo, my Salem colleagues, Don Jr., among others. I think Eric Schmidt, our buddy, Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt, they're in Manhattan in front of the courthouse where Trump was, closing arguments yesterday for the prosecution. Here's what they said. Was that during or after the proceedings yesterday? Do we know?
I believe this was after one, because they do have breaks. So
Okay.
I think this was one of those breaks.
Listen in.
What is Judge Merchan hiding? Here is a 28-page document from the Southern District of New York about what? Michael Cohen and why he is a criminal. This document was meant to be brought up in court. Judge Merchan suppressed it. This is from the Southern District. 28 pages on Michael Cohen being a perjurer and a criminal. What are you hiding, Judge Merchan? Is it perhaps the fact that your daughter has just made $93 million for the Democrat Party? President Trump is being gagged. He's the leader of the opposition. He is the only person who can replace the incumbent senile old man. And we know that this judge is working on behalf of the Democrats. Why are you hiding this document, Judge Merchan? I'm going to put it on the internet today. What are you hiding, Judge Merchan?
At the very heart of our democracy lies a principle we hold sacred, and that's free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish, allowing ideas to flourish, debates to ignite, and progress to be made. Without it, our pursuit of liberty, our ability to challenge, or our capacity to innovate, it would be really constrained. Now, in today's digital age, the very platform that should democratize information is being allowed to narrow the spectrum of ideas we're exposed to. Really important discussions about our wealth, our rights, our future, systemically silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, leaving many feeling voiceless in conversations that are really crucial to your financial independence and your security. And that's where the company Wealth Protection Research steps in. They're armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. I want to be clear about that. They're defenders of free speech. They're committed to giving a voice to the silenced. In an era where dialogues about retirement, investments, economic freedoms are increasingly censored, Wealth Protection Research is focused on ensuring that diverse, controversial, and revolutionary ideas also get a platform. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts through leaders and thought leaders, trailblazers, all who've been pushed to the margins by mainstream media and tech platforms like Facebook and Google. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, offering fresh, often contrarian perspectives on protecting and growing your wealth, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of this coming election. By spotlighting these thinkers, people like Jim Rickards or Porter Stansberry, Wealth Protection Research is not just sharing financial advice, they're fostering a movement toward a more open, informed, and free society. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 election wealth protection report, and it's a completely free report. It highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election, and it also contains ideas the mainstream media doesn't want to touch. Listeners to this show can get this whole thing completely free if you text the word ideas to 76626. Just text ideas to 76626, and if you do that today, you're also going to get a free gold investment kit from Wealth Protection Research. And the sponsor of that is Augusta Precious Metals, by the way, and we appreciate that. So just text ideas to 76626. If you're like me and you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, act now. Text ideas to 76626. Claim your free copy of this 2024 election report. You know, it's time to widen the scope of what we're told. You know we believe that here. Hear the ideas that establishment folks can't handle and don't think you can handle. Take control of your own financial destiny. Text ideas to 76626 to claim your free copy. The battle for free speech is the battle for our future, and Wealth Protection Research ensures that the ideas capable of shaping our financial well-being are available to all of us who want to hear them. So don't wait. Grab your free report right now. Text ideas to 76626 and claim your free copy.
The average meal costs 19% more than the average maximum SNAP benefit of $2.84. In the 5 counties with the largest gap between SNAP benefits and meal costs, the gap was about 70% all year. Meal costs are an average of 28% higher than SNAP benefits in urban areas. The decrease in the value of SNAP benefits coincides with the extended high food inflation observed in the United States. Food prices in 2023 were up near 6%. It had reached a high in 2022 of almost 10%, but it's still more than double the average of food inflation rate. So it sits at more than double the average food inflation rate, which is 2.5%. In 2024, the percentage of U.S. residents listing inflation as the top financial problem reached an all-time high. Meanwhile, not surprisingly, the Husk's approval rating falls to the lowest level in nearly 2 years. This from Reuters Ipsos. The 4-day poll, which closed Monday of this week, showed just 36% of Americans approve of Biden's job performance as president. That's down 38%. Down from 38% in April. It was a return to the lowest approval rating of his presidency. While this month's drop was within the poll's 3 percentage point margin of error, it could bode poorly for Biden as he faces off with Republican Donald Trump in the November 5th presidential election. Many people do not believe he's going to be sticking around. Many people are now convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that these debates are, in fact, going to be the official off-ramp for the Husk. I saw Cackle Britches was tying up traffic in Philadelphia again. She's back. This is her second visit in a month, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What's that about?
Just all the union money. I think, what was it, the AFSCME, whatever, one of them. I think they're set to give Biden like $200 million or something this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess they need all they can get. Trump outraised the Husk last month. I saw that number, too. These lawfare cases are just licenses to print money for Trump's campaign. People are sending in money every bit they can. 16,000 mail ballots were rejected in Pennsylvania in April. That could be a larger number in November. They are panicked at the Philadelphia Inquirer. You know, remember, Politico said that of the likely states to flip, they listed Pennsylvania as one of them. And there's real concern that ballots could be disqualified en masse. And if, in fact, they are, and it's close, They're already warning people about this. Voting rights groups preparing voter education campaigns and encouraging local officials to minimize the number of ballots rejected in November after thousands of mail ballots couldn't be counted last month. Ballots are rejected for a variety of reasons. Some are improperly filled out. Others don't make it to an election office before polls close. Nearly 16,000 ballots fell into that category during the April primary in Pennsylvania. The number represented an improvement on previous years, something state officials attributed to redesigned mail ballots, but it's still a significant number of votes that could determine the outcome of down-ballot races in high-turnout general election while sowing distrust in the high-stakes presidential election. You see, to have a standard by which we all accept and count ballots, that is to sow distrust. You understand? That's the interesting way they phrase this. That's the doublespeak of 2024 for the left. To have an operating standard for counting a ballot, that is to sow seeds of distrust. To expect that people sign and date a ballot and that it's legible and that you're a verifiable person. These are expectations that are possible disenfranchisements of voters. So they're out there warning people right now, make sure you do everything correctly or your ballot may not count. They're worried about it. The New York Times interviewed 24 black Philadelphia voters, and just 8 of them said they're voting for Biden. Gulp. So you see, you start to do the math on this. Inflation is sky high. They're starting to write stories about how ballots may be rejected. Now the New York Times is interviewing black voters in Philadelphia. What are you thinking? Most of them are saying, nah, no thanks. New York Times reports that the series of interviews, which indicates trouble for Biden's re-election prospects in a state he only won by 80,000 votes, occurred primarily in black neighborhoods. New York Times' Maya King and Katie Gluck wrote, just 8 voters said they were committing to voting for Mr. Biden, while many others were debating staying home or, in some cases, supporting Orange Man. Can you believe it? Black people told the New York Times openly they're voting Trump. This horrifies the people at the New York Times. Moreover, voters' gripes about Biden resemble those heard at Trump rallies and echoed by Trump's America First policy platform. The issues cited included immigration, the cost of living, and their sense that Mr. Biden was more focused on crises abroad than fixing problems in our neighborhoods. That's from the New York Times I'm reading, ladies and gentlemen. One voter, Latasha Humphrey, suggested to the Times that Biden is prioritizing other nations' problems over issues in her community. I don't care about what goes on overseas, she said, age 36. I care about where I live. And she's weighing Trump as an option in November. While the sample size should be taken with a grain of salt, it could signal broader enthusiasm problems for Biden with black voters in Philadelphia just 6 months out from the presidential election, the Times noted. Democrats have long banked on strong showings in Philadelphia and more recently its suburbs to offset weakness in conservative parts of the closely divided state. Their concern is not that the city's black voters will gravitate en masse to Trump, but that too many of them, apathetic about their choices, might simply stay home. Their concern comes as Biden's re-election chances are already being put in jeopardy by the uncommitted movement on the left. Some 600,000 Democrat voters, including Muslims, Arab Americans, young voters, and far-left progressives, protested Biden's handling of Israel and Hamas, with uncommitted or uninstructed voters in primaries this year. Uh-oh. So isn't this interesting? The New York Times writing about the uncommitted black vote, the possible soft support among blacks for Trump. Inquirer sweating rejected ballots. Biden's approval rating falls to the lowest in 2 years from Reuters Ipsos. What's going on here? And we've got a debate coming up, remember? Anytime, anywhere, pal. Make my day. I don't know. I'm starting to warm to the notion that this could well be the off-ramp they're looking for the husk. Very bad headlines a month out from the big show, isn't it?
Hey, Mike Lindell and MyPillow, you know the name. 20 years they've been singing the jingle on Fox News and on the radio. And it's no secret that Mike and the company have come under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attack. Big box stores have tossed MyPillow from their stores. Even the online retailers now won't sell MyPillow products. And who does that hurt, really? I mean, yeah, I understand they don't like Mike's position on the election or whatever, but Mike employs hundreds of Americans, hundreds of Minnesotans who make great products. If you know the MyPillow products, I sleep on them every night. So does my dog Dean. They're great products, and he wants to sell them to you at unbelievable prices, by the way, but they're backed with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee, and most importantly, again, they're made here in the United States. So it's not something he's asking me to say. It's just something I'd like to remind you of, that a guy who has an opinion, who happens to own a very successful American company and employs a lot of Americans who make great American products that a lot of you have bought and owned or are looking to buy and own. I just want you to know that while he takes it on the chin a lot out there for having the positions he has, he wants to keep his employees busy. He wants to keep the company moving along, and so he's passing on huge, huge savings to you in what he's calling the $25 extravaganza. Getting the word out, I want to invite you to check out this $25 extravaganza today. 2 multi-pack MyPillows, just $25. MyPillow sandals, just $25. I'm looking at the list of these deals right now. 6-pack towel set, just $25. 6-pack of towels, $25. And the MyPillows with the new Giza fabric, just $25. And here's the thing, if you order any or all of this stuff, if you exceed $75 with your order, he ships it to you for free. So free shipping on anything $75 or over. And look, with all those deals and so many more at just $25 a piece, I think you'll be very, very pleased with not just the quality, but the price point and the free shipping. It's MyPillow.com. I hope you'll use the promo code ChrisPodcast. MyPillow.com, ChrisPodcast, to take advantage of all these savings. Get that free shipping over $75. Or call 800-932-5056. Great operators, American-based operators. You can call and say, hey, I'm with you. And hang in there. 800-932-5056. Don't forget the promo code ChrisPodcast. It lets them know you listen, which I appreciate, but more importantly, get you that deal. MyPillow.com or 800-932-5056. Promo code Chris Podcast.
Ed Morrissey, managing editor at Hot Air, is back with us. We had such a great... Do you know the number of people that I heard from after our last conversation about... And it was so interesting that it was a prelude to the Harrison Butker commencement speech, Ed Morrissey, when you and I talked about a return to the traditions and values of traditionalist Catholicism. First of all, good morning. Welcome back.
Well, good morning. Yes, and I remember the conversation well. It was a great conversation.
I just thought it was so interesting that I think not even a week later, Harrison Butker delivers this speech. And then, interestingly, a week after that, the Pope gives this interview to Norah O'Donnell where he says conservatism is a prison or some such thing. I don't know. So I have a lot. And let me throw in for good measure, while we're at it, Benedictine sisters denounce Harrison Butker, Ed Morrissey. David Strom wrote this, your colleague at Hot Air. I give up, he says, at least for today I do. When the nuns and the Pope are less Catholic than a random football player, you have to wonder what the point is of having a church in the first place. And specifically, the Benedictine sisters said in a statement, they do not believe that Harrison Butker's comments in 2024's Benedictine College commencement address represent the Catholic Benedictine liberal arts college that our founders envisioned and in which we have invested. Instead of promoting unity in our church, our nation, and the world, his comments have seemed to foster division. We sisters have dedicated our lives to God and God's people, including the many women who have taught and influenced during the past 160 years. These women have made a tremendous difference in the world in their roles as wives and mothers, and through their God-given gifts in leadership, scholarship, and careers. So that's a lot, but I think it's so interesting given the conversation that we had about how so many people are returning to the traditions of the faith. What of this and the Pope's comments?
Well, first off, I think the Pope's comments did get a little bit misreported inside the United States because basically he shut the door on not just gender ideology again, but also on women deacons, which I was a little surprised by because that's not doctrinal. That's more practice than doctrinal. And I think that 60 Minutes may have been a little surprised to find out the Pope is actually somewhat Catholic.
And the gay marriage thing, too, right?
The gay marriage thing, yeah, shut that down, too. Said, no, we weren't blessing same-sex unions. We were blessing individuals who happen to be in same-sex unions with the hope that the blessing would help them find their way to the truth. And that I thought was very interesting as well. But, the Benedictine nuns, what can I say about nuns? They're wonderful people. And some orders are very oriented to nothing but prayer, right? Some are oriented more towards social justice. And it's one of the reasons why those orders tend to be declining over the years is because if you're really interested in social justice, you don't need to be a nun anymore. You just go into social justice. And I'm not going to say that these aren't women who are very intent on what they see as faith. But I think if you've got Harrison Butker getting up there and talking about traditional marriage and traditional roles in marriage, and it's scriptural, I'm failing to see how that's sort of contradictory to the spirit of a Catholic university. And I think that, again, it does go to show that perhaps what the issue is here is that these orders and these groups within the church have strayed into what I would call social clubs, rather than the church, being directed by the church, being directed by the scriptures, and that's not to say that those contributions can't be very valuable, but that's not the point of the church. The point of the church is to convert people to the gospel. It's to then spread the gospel and spread the church's understanding doctrine on family. So I'm not understanding exactly how preaching Catholic doctrine is somehow contradictory to the spirit of a Catholic university. That one I am going to have a little bit of a struggle with. But I'm not surprised that an order of nuns is more liberal than Harrison Butker. That doesn't surprise me in the least.
This is something that I think, be you Catholic, be you Protestant, or else something else. When I hear people say, well, that's a divisive speech, and I'm a good Christian, or I'm a good Catholic, or I'm a good whatever, and I don't believe in division. I want to unify. We want to bring people together. I guess I just kind of have to laugh at that because the Scripture is divisive. Scripture is
Jesus,
important.
Jesus even taught that.
Yes.
Jesus said that. This will divide, father from son and mother from daughter. Jesus talked about that because anything where you have to make a choice is going to be divisive. And Jesus understood that, and he tried to prepare the disciples and all of us for that very thing, is that you can get along and you can go along to get along, but at a certain point you have to make a choice. And when you choose, you're going to lose some people. I mean, the biggest example of this, especially this is something that Catholics focus on in the Gospel according to John, is when Jesus tells the crowds, you have to literally drink my blood and eat my flesh. And then the crowds all walk away, and the disciples are going, so what was that about? What parable were you trying to teach? He says, that's not a parable. and they're like, oh. And he says, are you going to walk away too? And Peter says, Lord, to whom else would we turn? You have the words of everlasting life. So Jesus understood that. It's actually in the gospel that when you preach the gospel,
yes,
it's going to be divisive.
I think that was always, Ed Morrissey, the insidiousness, maybe that's too strong a word, but I kind of believe it to be true, or at least the fallacy of the he gets us campaign. There's a great deal of money behind this whole he gets us thing, which I think is sort of the touchy-feely Jesus message, which, I guess in one sense is fine. Jesus is a kind, compassionate guy. It's not bad.
I think it's a good entree entree. I mean, it's a good entree to the word, so I didn't mind it at all. I've never had a problem with those ads. It's not very deep.
Yeah,
that's not the end of the message. It is, however, the beginning of it. And if you approach it that way, then it's got some value.
Well, it's like the Joel Osteen stuff. Like I'm not an Osteen guy, but I know that there are a few of my friends and family who have come to Christ, believe it or not, because they just started watching and reading and listening to Joel Osteen. And to that end, I say, well, okay, good. I mean, as long as you grow and you become a little more serious about it, if he gets us or Joel Osteen gets you there, I guess, okay. I don't mean to condemn those people as a vehicle, I guess. But it's like, it's hard work. The closer you get to Christ, it's tough stuff. It's not flip, No,
the more choices you have to make,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
The more choices you have to make, and the more you have to make those choices and make them publicly, the more divisive it's going to be.
That's right.
Even within your family, but certainly within your friends and in your community, the more you choose Christ, the more divisive it's going to get.
Yes.
And that's part of the sacrifice for faith. And I mean, you don't have to agree with everything that Harrison Butker said. I've heard from a couple of Catholics that was worried that he was using some potential dog whistle language that maybe he got because he was maybe a little too superficially online with some of this stuff. And you go back and read a couple of passages, and you can kind of see what they're talking about. And there were some Catholic women who I think had a legitimate complaint that he was kind of focused on the women and not on the men, in terms of preparing yourself for family life and not choosing, dissipation as a lifestyle. And I think that I see that a lot these days, is that it seems to be that choice seems to be placed on the shoulders of women perhaps more than it should, because a large part of the problem is that men are simply not prepared to be partners in that type of a relationship. And so I think that there's some fair opportunities for debate here. But, overall, what Harrison Butker said is exactly what the Catholic Church teaches.
Could I play for you just as a refresher? Because I think, to your point, he addressed the gentlemen after the ladies, and here's the minute of him talking to the men in the audience. Take a listen again.
To the gentlemen here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better. I speak from experience as an introvert who now finds myself as an amateur public speaker and an entrepreneur, something I never thought I'd be when I received my industrial engineering degree. The road ahead is bright. Things are changing, society is shifting, and people young and old are embracing tradition.
I thought that last sentence was kind of interesting because you said something similar. People young and old are embracing tradition, Ed Morrissey.
It is. And I think that, he addressed men a bit. But I think he needed to talk a little bit more about the traditional role of men in the family, too, because he kind of emphasized that among women, which is that you can't have, all of your choices of a career and have a family either, men. You have to make choices, men. Your role as leader of the household is as a servant leader, which means you're going to have to sacrifice some of your aspirations and ambitions and appetites to support your wife and your children in this home. And that very clearly means, some of your sexual appetites.
That's interesting. My preacher actually, after this kerfuffle, my preacher, just whenever this was last weekend, he very specifically said to the men, he said, we're not dogs. We have responsibilities to restrain ourselves and be responsible and be monogamous and maintain and control our lusts and all of those sorts of things. And you're right. So self-control, you thought he should have emphasized more in men.
Well, because he was emphasizing a bit in women, right? He was telling women, well, you're going to have a career, but it's not going to be the same thing as having a family, and you have to sacrifice for your family, and which is true.
I hear
but that's true of men too, and I think that there should have been equal emphasis. And I think if he had addressed that a little bit more directly, there may have been less criticism, even friendly criticism of what he had to say. And because I actually think that the problem, in terms of acculturation and family building, I have to say that it's probably more the men than the women. And in large part because of what he's talking about. We've had a couple of generations now where fathers are either missing or marginalized. In certainly in culture and really in practice. And so you have a bunch of boys growing up who don't know how to be men because they weren't around men, right? And they grew up in this 30 or 40-year experiment of, well, men aren't necessary in the household, and this is what you get. And so I know that there's a lot of stuff online right now about girl bosses lamenting their choices and crying on TikTok and Instagram about being lonely and all this kind of stuff and how that's supposedly their fault. And I'm certain that they probably are the authors of their own misery to some extent. But I look at the pickings,
Yeah. Oh, good Lord. Yes. The men.
Maybe that's the problem, right? There's not enough men who've learned to be men by the time that you get to the age where you're supposed to be building a family.
Yeah. Masculine men, responsible men who lead, as he said. I agree. In fact, I'll go one further and say grandfathers. I've always put a premium on my sons being around their grandfathers, not just me. I think multiple generations of men have responsibilities to raise up other men uniquely in the family. Not of course, girls too, but specifically our young men. You're right. So anyway, let me pivot quickly to something else that you've written, and I think it's pretty important at Hot Air, Ed Morrissey, the blatant moral hypocrisy of an ICC prosecutor requesting arrest warrants of Netanyahu. Netanyahu, God bless him, he keeps coming out and saying, I don't know in wartime who's been more deferential than I have been, who's given more heads up, who's tried harder to shirk the element of surprise to save lives than we have. Give me a break.
Yeah, it's absurd. This is a standard of war that no one has been held to in the past, in the present, or in the future. Only the Jews. And there's a reason for that. And I put that I put it that way very, very particularly because that's the actual issue here, is that the Jews have a state, and there's a lot of people who are very unhappy that the Jews have a state. And that includes the global elite in these multilateral organizations, the ICC being a big one. The United Nations practically exists to pester Israel. You've got countries like Iran and Cuba who are on the human rights committees that routinely issue these, accusatory reports on Israel being an apartheid state. Iran and Cuba and China, for that matter, which is conducting a Uyghur genocide and has been for years. It's morally perverse.
Yes.
They are going after Israel in most cases without even mentioning the fact that Hamas is still holding hostages that they refuse to let go, which is a war crime in itself, let alone the war crimes that they committed on October 7, right, to start this war, that the Gazans were in favor of. They were cheering as it was happening, as they were watching the live streams coming at them on their social media channels. The Gazans were cheering and rallying to Hamas. And then they got the war that they clearly wanted, and now they want everybody to intervene because the Jews are mean. I mean, this is so absurd as to be almost satire. It's very frightening that it's not satire.
Ed, the Senate chaplain Barry Black issued a prayer on the Senate floor. Let's take a listen.
And Lord, we pray for the Iranian people who mourn the death of their president. We pray in your loving name. Amen.
All right, Ed Morrissey, it's all yours.
So for the 3 Iranians that were mourning the guy, I think they probably really appreciated that. This guy was called the Butcher of Tehran.
Yeah.
This is the guy who ran what they were calling 5-minute trials so that they could slaughter dissidents through the 1980s and I think into the 1990s, if I remember correctly. These were going on for quite a long period of time, and he was very, very proud. Raisi was very, very proud of having slaughtered thousands and thousands and thousands of Iranians through these, mock trials, this judicial execution method that they had basically taken from the Nazis, right?
Yes.
And the Soviets, for that matter. Stalin was a master at that. For that matter, Saddam Hussein was a master at that. And we are eulogizing a guy who is called the Butcher of Tehran for very, very good reasons. He was basically a mass murderer. What's next? A prayer for, Charles Manson?
I really do wonder the responsibility of leaders. It's said that those in the pulpit will be judged doubly. In our eternity, it's scriptural, it's biblical, and I wonder, do you think, is this just sloppy from a Senate chaplain, Barry Black, or is this purposeful, or just they think it's the right thing to do, or what is it?
No, I don't think it's sloppy. I think that this is a emblematic of the left, right? Which is that they're going to side with the monsters against what they see as the oppressors and the oppressor-oppressed paradigm that they operate out of, or more to the point, occupier-occupied paradigm. So the Iranians are running proxy wars against Israel because they see, and the American left sees, well, not just the American left, the European left, sees Israel as an occupying force, right, an apartheid nation that is oppressing brown people. Never mind that the Israelis, the Jews, have been in Judea and Samaria on a consistent basis for the last 3,500 years. That's their homeland. That is where their people have continuously lived for 3,500 years. It's the Arabs and the Turks who were the actual occupiers, who were the actual imperialists, who end up sweeping through those areas at different times. And what they're arguing for, because they're ignorant, is that they basically want the occupiers to take it back over again.
Stunning.
And to kick the Jews out, once and for all. So this thing here with sending out eulogizing messages. The State Department did the same thing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't quite as florid as this, but the State Department sent out a condolence to the people of Iran for the loss of their mass murdering president, and at the same time, the people of Iran have been trying to revolt against these people for the last 15 years at least, since 2009.
Yeah, and I really don't. It's not a mistake. I know it's not a mistake, but it's jarring really when it's so close to one another. When you see heads on fire about Harrison Butker within a week's time of eulogizing an Iranian thug, it's
clarifying.
It is.
It's
That's
clarifying.
it. That's the word.
You get a chance to see what they actually see as monsters. They actually see Christians, committed Christians, as monsters, but mass murderers as freedom fighters. I mean, this gets into the whole Che Guevara thing.
Yes.
I mean, if you really want to take it all the way through, having Che Guevara as a fashion icon was another serial killer for La Revolucion. I mean, this guy was murdering people left and right, but he was cute and he could write a little.
Ed Morrissey is managing editor at Hot Air, and every time we talk, it becomes more and more edifying. Which, by the way, you ought to consider making the title of another column, Edifying. with Ed Morrissey.
Edifying.
Ed
I
hyphen
never even thought
Afine.
about that, Chris. Thank you so much.
It's all yours. Just consider it a Memorial Day gift.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Have a great weekend, my friend. Thank you.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.